What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's the good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and this is one of my favorite series over the last year or two, kind of doing a deep dive / scouting breakdown on our undrafted free agent class. Of course, this one being the 2025 edition, and we're kicking things off today with Missouri quarterback Brady Cook. And I love this series because you can assume or project that there's going to be at least one diamond in the rough or a hidden gem, but then there's also guys that are going to be roster fits or scheme fits or in certain cases unexpected undrafted free agents in many situations, right? Whether it's due to maybe certain character issues, maybe it's due to an injury history, whatever the case ends up being. And with Brady Cook, he really feels like he is a perfect roster fit for the New York Jets and what they want in that quarterback room, because you have Justin Fields, who the New York Jets pushed all the chips into the middle of the table for. You have Tyrod Taylor, who you feel extremely comfortable as a backup, but he does carry the injury history with him. And so when you think about filling in that QB3 slot and what you want there, would you like a ridiculous, Broly traded type person, right? Meaning they have the arm strength, they have the speed, they have the physical size of an NFL quarterback that you would covet. They bring dual threat ability for the modern offense, and they have a wealth of experience and ideally a winning background, right? With Brady Cook, I think you get a above average kind of summation of all of those different character traits. And so he just slots in really well to be a strong competitor to Adrian Martinez, which was a guy I really liked from last year and kind of lit it up over the course of preseason. And one of the things that is going to not only help himself, but it's also going to help our first draft pick in Armand Membou, is that those two have a connection. Brady Cook was his quarterback, so while he'll probably never be blocking for him over the course of Jets training camp, right? With him being slotted in as a first stringer, assumedly, and Brady Cook maybe at best working his way up into some QB2 type snaps. Even if they do or they don't, that familiarity as they both look to bridge the gap from jumping from college to the NFL is going to be a huge plus. Not only that, you would imagine that Brady Cook could give some insight to Armand Membou and even Justin Fields and the rest of the quarterbacks as to what he, how he makes adjustments according to quarterback responses, or what's the best way to push and motivate him, since they've been together for about 3 years. So I love all of that, right? Now, 6'2", 214 pounds. He's going to be built not necessarily as your prototypical quarterback, but he's going to bring that plus size that you like. Has spent 5 years in college, so he has a wealth of experience. In fact, he's played about 2,667 career snaps. So this isn't a guy that you have to project seriously what you're getting. I think most people feel comfortable with what he'll end up being in the league, which may just be a long-term capable backup type quarterback, which would be a huge win here, right? If you hit on that anywhere on day 3 is a plus, so finding one in undrafted free agency is just, chef's kiss. He's been a team captain for the last 3 seasons, so as a junior, senior, and a redshirt senior or fifth-year senior, Missouri runs a pro-style offense for the most part, right? And we talked about this with Armand Membou, where realistically you're talking about a West Coast type scheme, zone run-oriented offense. So he also has that experience having to be highly effective and efficient with the pass attempts he's going to get, because ideally you're talking about probably a 60-40 split in terms of run-pass orientation there. Former 3-star recruit, he was an East and West Shrine Bowl participant as well, and he was one of the few people to throw at the combine, right? And there were some notable names in there, which is why it stood out to me that a lot of people that critiqued and were there to see the combine and quarterback throws named him as the best passer out of a couple of names, such as Jackson Dart, Tyler Shugg, Quentin Ewers, and Kyle McCord, who, of course, all went drafted in this year's draft class. So This isn't a scrub. Missouri playing in the SEC, doing it for a multitude of years, walking away as a 39-game starter with even more just game time experience than that, but ultimately a 26-13 record as a starter. It's a huge plus, right? His resume is more robust than any UDFA that you're generally going to see, and so it's almost like you did steal a day 3 quarterback here if you were talking about drafts, right? And I think projection wise, the highest that I was able to find was generally about a high 7th round pick. I feel like I've seen 6 somewhere, but off the top of my head and just looking at my notes, 7th round was about where people thought, and then generally it was prior to UDFA projections for him. But it wasn't for lack of statistics, it wasn't for lack of experience, playing terribly, anything of that sort. I think when you look at him, people just see a lower ceiling than what you expect out of a potential starting level quarterback, and then in terms of what he can be as a backup, that's where I feel like maybe he got railroaded a little bit, because his tape is is littered with all manner of NFL throws, NFL caliber defenses, or at least talents that'll be staying in the NFL for a pretty solid length of time. And he has some staple games, which you can make the argument not every draftable quarterback tends to have one, but definitely a multitude of these type of games where even if it's not necessarily their best tape, it's a highlight extended moment into this is what we expect we can get at the NFL level. We just want to try to get that 100% of the time. And as I mentioned, he's done it on a multitude of different platforms, right? And against different opponents. Kansas State in 2023. I think the Auburn one from 2024 was realistically the calling card from him, where he went out, I believe, due to an ankle injury that he actually had to go to the hospital for, and I feel like they said he got surgery later on, but either way, he makes it out of the hospital. He comes back late into that game, and he finds a way to win. And then you have the Cotton Bowl versus Ohio State, where he went off for 350 plus yards and 2 touchdowns. So, or at least if I'm recalling the correct game, that was around what he did. Either way, beat them 14-3. Had a pretty solid pro day as well. 47 passes, completed 44 of them. And one of the things that I think could have accelerated his career a little bit further was the head coach was essentially playing a multitude of roles for him. So it's not like you are set up with the classic head coach overseeing the entire system. OC is really in the nooks and crannies, making sure everything is operating the way you expect it to. And then you also have a position coach. He was kind of wearing 3 hats at one point. And so I believe it was 2023 where they officially decided to hire their offensive coordinator, Kirby Moore. And he had a motto that I think you see consistently come up over the last 2 years of tape for him, where is don't make a bad play worse. And one of the critiques around Brady Cook's game is the fact that he's maybe not as aggressive in certain spots as you'd like to see, or giving his wide receiver chances, where he may pass on the 50-50 ball, where it's not a bad read, it's not a bad decision-making opportunity, but it could be a turnover type play for him just based on whatever he's capable of doing, versus taking the check down and kind of living to fight another day. So that might be something that is not a terrible trait, but you have to work out of his system depending on how aggressive you want him to be within this type of offense. 2024, 62.6% completion percentage, 2,535 yards, 11 touchdowns. He holds a SEC record for throwing 365 passes without an interception. And of course, this spanned the 2022 and 2023 season. And even going into 2024, he only had 2 interceptions, and he only had a 1% turnover worthy play rate. So I think that's one of the biggest numbers that are going to stand out for him, of course, in that this isn't a guy that makes a ton of critical mistakes. And again, I go back to the thinking of the model that the OC's kind of beaten to his head. One of the other things that probably, which leads into that ceiling conversation that led him to being undrafted, is the fact that he doesn't necessarily have any elite traits. I would say leadership is his superpower, and we'll kind of chat about that as we dive into what he does well here and such. But two-time SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year, and he was also a multiple bowl game MVP. Excuse me. Injury history is going to be pretty scary, right? So even dating back to when he won the starting job in 2022, which, by the way, he also had to win repeatedly. The head coach didn't just give it to him after the first round. He had to compete for it in 2022, competed for it in 2023, and I think after that Auburn game where he really established himself, that's when it stopped being a competition going into the season. But he's dealt with a torn labrum, multiple ankle issues, hand, wrist issues, and so it's the scariest part about, I guess, him walking into potentially earning the QB3 job, and the fact that you'll have two injury-prone-ish quarterbacks behind Justin Fields in the event that anything happens where maybe he just needs to take a week or two off, and you don't want those kind of glass jaw style players behind him. But it is what it is. For what they bring and the skill sets that we're going to talk about here is well worth it. Now, what does he do really well? He's capable of making every NFL throw. I've seen a wide range of opinions on what his actual NFL strength is in terms of the arm talent, and I think it's clear he can make every NFL throw. Now, when you look at some of his attempts on the deep ball, there are times where, and to this extent, right, you'll see him kind of overthrowing a couple balls, but in general, I think that the accuracy wanes a little bit the farther you go, and it's not always because it's like he's throwing a wobbly ball or anything. I think it's just a situation where it's not a focal point for them, right? I think he's elite within the first, I think, not to say he's elite, I think he is NFL caliber anywhere within the, 40 yards to the line of scrimmage. Once you start extending into that 45, 50, 55 plus range, I think then you have some opportunity where you don't want him consistently taking those type of shots. And I think he'll make some improvements there and some strides. Again, being hindered a lot with some of those like hand wrist injuries, seeing if he ever fully recovered from like the torn labrum, for example. Those are things to be aware of, and maybe have the modest approach when you're looking at the film. But I want to say upper tier athleticism. It's definitely above average for a guy his size. He definitely moves really, really well. Fluid mover, kind of has a bit of a running back mentality when it comes to looking to pick up every possible yard out there. And he's definitely been very effective on the ground, over 1,000 yards rushing over the course of his career, in double-digit touchdowns as well. You'll kind of see him be an occasional escape artist, which lends itself to this idea of not just him as a runner, but also the mobility that he can bring to an offense, which will be a key piece of being able to maintain the same playbook for every quarterback that's going to be operating for the New York Jets this year without having to make extreme changes there. A quick release, I want to say, is probably one of the better traits about watching him throw, right? He has a bit more of that consistent throwing motion, which is ideal considering he's played almost 3,000 snaps in college, which tends to be a bit more rare. But he can get the ball out of there and he can get out in a hurry, especially when everything is clicking and flowing in rhythm for him. He's intriguing because when you see him, start to get comfortable and you see him get a couple of completions in a row and that rhythm is going and he's ripping off 8-9 play drives that are resulting in points, you kind of see an increase to his ability to throw the ball, whether it's off platform, whether it's just hitting guys on the numbers anywhere in the short to intermediate routes. And then when he's taking those shots deep, he's hitting on those, and it looks picture perfect most of those times. So you want to see if you can kind of tap into that mentality switch and see if you can get a level of consistency out of that, which is where I would say if you do, you're getting a high-level backup quarterback type player. I do think there's a level of comfortability with him as a starter where maybe you're not winning, 12 games every year, or that's the expectation or projection with him as a QB. But this is definitely a guy that, as long as you have a handful of the pieces around him, again, not like he had a superstar studded class. Obviously, Membou and Luther Burden really go-to names here, but it's not like he had top tier talent and he was still a winning quarterback in the SEC when he finally was able to win his starting job. I think he does a pretty decent job being able to anticipate windows, go through his progressions. You can see him adapt at the line of scrimmage based on pre-snap reads. So sometimes it is him locking in on his primary read and understanding that he expects that guy to be open. But other times it's also just he knows how to get his guys in the position, in the correct position, or audible these guys out to where they should have a more likely opportunity to successfully complete or, get a big run, whatever it is that they're looking to accomplish. Resets his base on the move, so for his ability to be able to scramble or get outside the pocket, or even some of the subtle pocket shifts that he does, 1-2 movement type situations, he's able to make sure that he can get things realigned more often than not so that he can be as accurate as possible. I think most of his best work is going to be in the short area where you see him lead a lot of opportunities for yards after the catch and not sending his guys into, hospital balls. And then he's a solid pressure sensor, I think, both when it's coming interior from the defensive tackle or when it's coming from somebody that's either super strong or lightning quick off of the edge, and he tries to adjust accordingly. Areas of opportunity for him, he does need to sync up his timing and his accuracy a little bit more. I think he has a repetitive motion, but it's not as consistent as you would like it to see. You can definitely see some of his mechanics breaking down. Again, some of that maybe contributed to injury, but also just the fact that it seems like a couple kinks that he hasn't really been able to work out of his game. He could improve his eye discipline. I think he does leave some plays out there where he's giving these secondary and specifically some of the safeties opportunities to make plays on some of the balls where it should really just be a one-on-one type situation, or it's completely up to him to just make sure he can get the ball to his guy. Mechanics will break down versus pressure, and this is going to be an issue you'll see with 100% of quarterbacks in the NFL. He does hang tough and can make sure he delivers some of those balls, but it's not going to be making sure that his base is set up and he's making sure his shoulders are rounded and all that kind of stuff that is going to require being able to pull off an elite throw with somebody getting ready to cave your chest in. Can lock onto his primary read occasionally, and I don't even think this goes into some of the conversations that we had about him locking in onto guys, pre-snap based on his reads. It's just a certain situation where he's playing a lot of top-tier competition. Sometimes he's just going to need to lean on the fact that his number one wide receiver needs to make a play, or whoever he deemed to be the open man at that time. Downfield accuracy concerns where you don't really see him leading his receiver consistently, and we kind of chatted about that, so I'll really just leave it as that. You guys can let me know what you think about his deep ball ability, but one of the biggest elements, and I think this will be a challenging piece as he moves to the NFL level, is that you've seen multiple times on field where defenders were able to rotate just before the snap of the ball, and it really ended up confusing and perplexing him a little bit, which forced him to hold on to the ball, which led to some mistakes because his mechanics were breaking down, or he was just generally confused, and so it took him a couple ticks longer than it normally would to go through some of his progressions. But when I look at him, and from, again, some of the stuff I was able to dig up, there's two comparisons that come to mind. E.J. Perry for maybe what you're getting right now out of the gate, and then Kevin Kolb in terms of what he could be if he reaches, the pinnacle of each of the abilities and traits that he's bringing to the NFL. And while we wrap this up here, getting back into that leadership topic, not only has he played through a multitude of all of these injuries, including the torn labrum, but I think when you look at how he's pulled out a ton of those wins, the Auburn game, the bowl games, he's really been able to find a way to hit that next level in all of the biggest moments. Having 2 back-to-back double-digit seasons in the SEC isn't anything to sniff your nose up at either. So I really like this guy. I've been seeing a ton of the videos about him being a hidden gem and all that kind of stuff, and I do think is warranted to a certain degree depending on what your expectations are. But let me know what you guys think. I know this is a bit of a longer video actually than even I was expecting, but let me know what you think about Brady Cook. How high are you on him? And do you think he can beat out Adrian Martinez in a off-season competition? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.